Okay, so you should have all heard the spooky Zoom voice, which lets you know that this is being recorded. Welcome, everybody. Hi. Welcome to Grow Your Sales in 2022. So I just wanted to start off by saying a huge thank you. Claire can't hear. Can everyone else hear? Can just get confirmed that everyone can in fact hear me? Yes, excellent. Okay, wonderful. That's brilliant. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you really to everyone who's joining me today. I know that it's Christmas week. I know that many people have either wrapped up or are wrapping up their year. So I really appreciate you being here. And if you're watching on replay, then welcome as well. Just a couple of little housekeeping bits before we get started. So a few things. I will do questions at the end if that's okay with everybody. And what I would very strongly suggest is that please do come into the chat and say hi, to, share your opinion, say hi, maybe even a bit of networking with some other small business owners. When you are in the chat, you will notice that there's a drop down menu or drop down arrow, and it says hosts and panelists, or you can select everyone. So you just want to make sure that you've selected everyone. Otherwise, I can see what you say, but not everybody else. So it's always nice if you say everyone, and then that everyone can see the chat. The other thing to say is that if you've got a question, it would really help me out an awful lot if you would put that in the Q&A section. So you'll see that there's at the bottom, because this is a webinar rather than a typical Zoom meeting, we've got chat and we've also got Q&A. So the questions in the Q&A, comments in the chat, it just means that at the end, when I come back to answer the questions, it saves me having to scroll through the chat and pick them out. The session is scheduled until 11:30. We may or may not take that long, but I'm going to be here for questions if anyone, specifically if people have got questions at the end. I know when I've done these sessions before, then people generally have quite a lot of questions, and I know that this in particular is a subject that people do have a lot of questions about, because what is going to happen next year? Let's find out. Just to say as well, if you're watching this and you're on Instagram, then please do tag me in. I always love it when I do talks and people tag me, show me where they're watching, get to see a little bit behind the scenes of, I'm sitting here in my office in Southeast London. It's always nice to see where people are when they're watching. And if you're watching on the replay, then let us know you're watching the replay. That's fine too. I love to see it when people, it's always really fun on the day when people share, and then as the days go by, I see a few people sharing on the replay as well. So if you're watching the replay, then do shout me out as well. I love to see where you're watching. I know that a lot of people who've signed up for this are busy at this time of year, funnily enough, so have signed up to watch the replay in the quieter period between Christmas and New Year. So if that's you, then welcome. And if it's you who's here today, then welcome too. As I said, thank you so much for being here. Very quickly, a little bit about me. Most of you know who I am. I'm Catherine Eardley. This is my 21st year in the retail industry. And also, I have to say, today is the 4th anniversary of me leaving my corporate job. So I walked out the doors of Paperchase HQ 4 years ago today and haven't looked back. And I am very happy to be a small business retail expert working exclusively with startup independent brands, and of course the wonderful members of my membership group, the Resilient Retail Club. And what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to go through what just happened, because I think that's a valid question. We're going to talk about the year ahead. We're going to specifically talk about some big retail trends in the year ahead, and we're also going to touch on some product trends as well. So I had a conversation yesterday with Etsy's trend experts, and I've got some information as well from people like the head of product at Shopify and the Pinterest predictions as well, which I'm going to be sharing. And then we're going to talk a little bit towards the end about what do you do with all this information, what does it mean for you in your business, creating a plan of action, and touching on how do we use these Christmas sales to build for next year, because often we get this idea in our head that the Christmas selling period is actually the finish line, but in a lot of ways it's really the starting pistol for 2022. So we're going to talk about what that even means. Okay, so If you've watched one of my talks before, you may have seen this graph. This is the updated version. If you've never seen it before, then what this is showing you, this graph, this all falls under the category of what on earth just happened, because I would say if I had to sum up the last year in 2 words, I would say that challenging and volatile would be my 2 words, because I'm not sure if would anybody disagree with those words. Does anyone have different words for 2021? I'd love to know if you feel the same way. But speaking to my one-to-one clients, speaking to the group members, it definitely feels like, speaking to small businesses in general, completely unpredictable. Yeah, I think that's fair enough to say. Inspirational, says Claire. I love it. Okay, fantastic. So this graph that you're seeing here, this goes all the way back to 2006, and it tracks the percentage of internet sales as a total, the internet sales as a percentage of total retail sales. So this is saying for every pound that is spent in the whole retail industry, what percentage is being spent online. And it's useful because it tells a story. You can see that there has been a gradual increase from 2006, and then you go over here to the right hand side of the chart, and it all just starts going a bit bananas. So what you see is this massive spike up here. This is March 2020 when we first went into lockdown, reopening for the summer. This peak up here is into November, December, so Christmas time last year. And then you can see it drop down below 2020 levels in the summer, and then it started climbing back up in 2021 November. We don't have December on either of the charts that I'm going to show you, but I think what you're really seeing here is this volatility. So you're seeing that it was quite dramatic. It was almost, you could almost draw a straight line through the graph as you go going along from 2006 to 2020, and then with 2020 it just suddenly started peaking and troughing, really in line with lockdown and excuse me, the easing of restrictions. Excuse me. I have a non-COVID cough. Oh, always the way. Hang on. Try a sip of coffee. Okay, so if you have been feeling like your online shop, excuse me, has been really volatile, then this is why you can really see that the sales have been spiking and dropping. And the key thing really to recognize is that although we are below 2020 levels at this point, we're way above 2019. Excuse me, I'm going to mute myself for a minute and I'm going to cough. Sorry about that, everybody. I just didn't think you particularly wanted to hear me coughing. Okay, so that is one thing that's kind of behind the volatility that we've really seen in 2021. This is another graph which I thought was really interesting. And both of these graphs come from the Office of National Statistics. If you're a statistics and retail nerd like me, then there's lots of really interesting information. They go into quite a lot of detail by the various different product types as well. So it's well worth a look. But here where I thought what was interesting as well is that they've got the seasonally adjusted numbers. So these dark blue ones are non-seasonally adjusted, so you can see the peaks. You can see the way that you always get that December peak. We haven't, again, this doesn't include December for this year, so you can't quite see where this is going to have peaked, whether it's going to be above last year or below. But what you can see again, so you've got the seasonally adjusted number, and the seasonally adjusted number sort of is supposed to smooth out these peaks and troughs, but you can just see again, like looking in last year, that we just dropped down, and then again we were used to having this rather smooth upward line, but the last 2 years just look a completely different shape. And I think, again, for me, this just goes to, if you've been feeling like it's very unpredictable, then you're not alone, because the industry itself has been very unpredictable. Okay, moving on. So what's ahead for 2022? Well, one of the things that I've heard to describe 2021 is this idea of COVID bookends. It's a horrible a horrible description, but accurate. So unfortunately, in the summer, it looked like we were on one trajectory, and there was lots of talks of things easing up and things reopening. But effectively, we're ending 2021 in a very similar way in which we started, with this idea about what's going to be happening and just this huge amount of uncertainty around if there can be future restrictions. Obviously, the vaccine program has made a massive difference to hospitalizations. It's a different decision-making process, but at the same time, in many ways, 2021 does have these COVID bookends, start and finish in the same way. So with 2022, everything that I've read, everybody I've spoken to, again, it doesn't look like it's going to be anything other than an extension of 2021 in terms of that uncertainty. Obviously, we'd like to think that as we move into the summer, again, things will open up, maybe even sooner than that, who knows? But this volatility that we've seen in 2021 looks set to continue in 2022. So as a business owner at the beginning of 2022, I think we have to recognize that it is going to be reasonably unpredictable. We're just going to have to put in our best guesses. I'm going to have to do what we can to try and shore ourselves up against this kind of volatility. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk you through 5 shifts in the industry. A lot of these shifts, or 5 major trends impacting the industry as we move into 2022. A lot of these may seem familiar. We may have talked about these before, but these are the ones that keep coming up time and time again. And I think I picked them as well because I think they're useful for small businesses in particular to be thinking about as you're sitting here at the end of 2021 and thinking about what you want to do moving forward for 2022. So we've got hybrid retail, social selling, values-based retail, focus on loyalty, and value-based retail. And to start off with hybrid retail then. So what is hybrid retail? Well, hybrid retail effectively is kind of a new name for omni-channel retail. It's this recognition that this online versus offline distinction, where we think about e-commerce versus store commerce, is really just no longer a useful definition. That people tend to make decisions that may start online but could finish offline. So for example, there's a very interesting technology company called Near Street. I've written about them before this year. I always think they're worth checking out. They do some very interesting work. And what I find particularly interesting about Near Street is that they really have tapped into this idea that the guy who co-founder Nick Brackenbury, he says, we need to recognize that most customer journeys will start online, but they won't always finish online. Sometimes the best and most convenient place for them to finish is in a shop down the road. So they're all about trying to make online stock in stores, physical stores, available for online searching. So that if you search for batteries, then you might get a website selling batteries, but you might equally be told that 5 minutes down the road there's a shop that has batteries. And I think that in terms of when we talk about supporting the high streets, supporting small independents, I think this is going to be absolutely crucial, because it basically means that offline inventory is as useful. This is as easily searchable and probably more convenient and quicker to get than online inventory, which of course one of the main advantages of online purchasing is that you can see the stock and you can just buy it, it's there. Whereas his vision is that in a few years' time, checking the stock availability online before you go to a physical store is going to be as normal as checking whether or not the shop is open. There's lots of research behind this. So the Boston Consulting Group said that 48% of shoppers were shopping in a hybrid sense, which means that at some point they're touching both an online and an offline touch point, versus 39% last year. So more and more people, so this is a growing trend, that people are getting used to researching online and then going to a physical store. So what does it mean for you as a small business owner? Well, if you're a small business owner who sells predominantly online, I think that for me, when I read about hybrid retail and I think about the small businesses that I work with, the small businesses in the club, then I think that this is really for me, this is a real underlining the fact that having multiple revenue streams and thinking about your own business as a hybrid is actually really powerful as well. Because if I were to look at the people who've weathered this storm the last couple of years, who've continued to perform really well, they often have multiple revenue streams. So they're not just selling online. They, for example, do wholesale, if that's available to you. Obviously, it's not available to everybody, depending on your pricing structure. But then they also don't just do wholesale, they have a strong direct to consumer. Maybe they work with the local shops to them. Maybe they sell through a third-party marketplace as well. And I think for a small business, it's recognizing that there could be multiple touch points, multiple sales channels. And what's beneficial about this approach, whether or not you're a physical retailer who needs to have a website to complement you, if, for example, footfall drops because everyone's worried about a new variant, or if you're an online seller who wants to have multiple streams, I think that's one of the best ways to protect yourself going forward. Because as we've seen in the graphs and the volatility of the retail industry over the last couple of years, then we've seen these big fluctuations between the percentage of money being spent online versus the percentage of money being spent in stores. And I think that it just really reiterates that we can't foresee what's going to happen in 2022, but what we can foresee is that it's going to be volatile and that it's going to be unpredictable. So how do you deal with unpredictability? You try and hedge your bets. And I think when we're talking about hybrid retail specifically, it's thinking about, okay, actually, yes, my website is one sales channel, but are there any other sales channels that I can build around me so that if web sales go quiet, then my wholesale might pick up and vice versa. And I have to say, the businesses that I've worked with that have had I don't want to say the easiest ride, because I don't think anyone's had an easy ride, but the ones who've been able to keep growing, it's been about having those multiple channels where they've got that ability to push wholesale when maybe online's been a bit quieter in the summer, and vice versa, push their own website when stores have been quiet, because the customer is fluctuating. The customer is changing how much they're spending online versus in physical stores repeatedly, almost month on month, and we see it shift. And I think everyone felt it in April when the non-essential retail reopened and everybody's online store suddenly went quiet. You can see these shifts happening, and we know not only does this happen, but also that the customer likes to shop across both physical stores and online. So I think as small business owners moving into 2022, it's asking yourself that question: how could this work for me? How could this work for my business? Is there another sales channel I could put in? So effectively, it's all of this is the idea of not putting, I'd say probably the majority of what I'm going to say today is all about don't put all your eggs in one basket. Okay, so the next theme is about social selling. So social selling is effectively where commerce spreads to more platforms in a way that is non-disruptive to the user experience. So think about you're on Instagram, you see somebody's post, you can tap on it, you see the product tags and you can shop them. That's social commerce. So as we know, it was a bumper year for e-commerce last year, obviously fluctuated, but overall it was a bumper year. I'm going to keep drinking my water to try and avoid another coughing fit. 73% of customers surveyed had shopped via an app. Over half of the world's population use social media, not just for socializing, but also for purchasing as well. Hashtags like TikTok made me buy it have huge reach, huge numbers of people showing that they purchased via TikTok, for example. And basically, for my Retail Trends article, I had an email interview with Amir Kabara, who is the head of product for Shopify, and that he was basically saying Shopify as a tech platform, as an online selling tech platform, are really banking on the social commerce. And the way that Amir Kabara described it was that it's anyone who's got a platform with content, it's about shoppable content. So he also said things like, you know, the line between entertainment and and shopping is blurring. So if you've got a YouTube channel, people monetizing their YouTube channels, shoppable content, it's the way that e-commerce is moving. So it's not even so much about necessarily going to a website as much as it is you're on social media anyway and you see something that you want to purchase. Within that, live streaming, I know that a few people I've spoken to have just put the fear of God into them about live streaming, because if you're not a big fan of video, then this is not great news. But live streaming, which is effectively, think QVC, but for for anyone can do it. I mean, I did this talk and somebody had asked me if this was the correct setup for live streaming, and effectively this photo, which is a stock photo, but effectively, yes, if you've got a phone and don't even necessarily need a ring light, you can do live streaming. All the major platforms, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok, obviously, they've all launched live streaming platforms. Shopify themselves have seen a 40% increase in the last 3 months in the number of live streaming apps that are being downloaded in their app store. And there's an estimate that worldwide this market is going to be worth 224 billion by 2028. So live streaming, it's huge in China, it's getting much bigger in the US. Lots of big retailers did it this year for Christmas, for Black Friday. And it's a real opportunity. I think if you think about live selling more as an opportunity to connect with your customer, I can totally imagine that why a customer might be interested in hearing about your products, and maybe you can really explain them and you can show them. And I've said this before about video, that the benefit of video is it's the closest thing to replicating being in person, being in a physical store. So you can explain to someone how big this extra big mug is, and you can really get into the detail. So I would say for sure, if you're looking forward to your plans for 2022, I would think about how you can at least start trying to experiment with this. Just try it. How can you? It's a low barrier into entry. It's no real different than doing an Instagram live, even doing an Instagram story. Probably, less demanding than coming up with a reel with a funny audio. So why not try it? Why not think about it? But for sure, this is the way that e-commerce is going. E-commerce is, we've seen everything shifting on Instagram from images to videos. And I think we'll see e-commerce going that way too. People want to see those videos. They want to see your videos, guys. Okay, so values-based retail. Again, this is not new. I've talked about conscious consumerism, I think probably for at least the last 3 or 4 years. But conscious consumerism, it's really, I think it's kind of got broader. And the way I describe it is that shoppers really want the businesses that they buy from to be doing good. So that can mean sustainability, but I think it goes beyond that. It's also things like the importance of representation. So, for example, I did a piece earlier this year about representation with Black greetings cards and Black Christmas decorations. People want to see retailers thinking about inclusivity, and they really want the businesses that they buy from to be sustainable. So Boston Consulting Group's research showed that 90% of consumers were more concerned about sustainability than ever before. 41% of them said that sustainable and recycled packaging impacted their purchasing decision, and 70% of them were willing to pay a 5% premium on more sustainable items, which I thought was interesting, because 5% for you guys watching, I'm sure you know, it's not a massive amount. But if you look at that across the whole cost of the product, it's interesting. So 70% of people would be willing to pay that premium. On the flip side, though, because this is something that a lot of companies have cottoned on to, is really important to customers, 63%, the Chartered Institute of Marketing did some research. They said that 63% of customers really wanted to know more about the sustainability efforts of the businesses that they buy from, but they were skeptical. So a lot of people are kind of skeptical about greenwashing. So really, it's about, are you doing good with your business? Are you thinking about sustainability? Are you thinking about the impact that your business has on this world? And are you communicating that to your customers and doing it in a way that is radically transparent as well. You've been really, really clear and upfront. A big piece of this as well, the whole values piece of sustainability. One of the major growth areas in retail has been the resale industry. So the resale industry is defined as secondhand, but it's slightly more curated. So almost like a curated selection of secondhand. In the fashion industry in particular, I think it works particularly well for fashion because items they hold their value for longer, they're easier to resell. That's growing at 11 times the rate of the normal clothing industry. And the prediction is that by 2025, it will be worth 77 billion, which will actually be twice the size of the fast fashion market. So consumers want more circular options. And I think as well, I think it's interesting, I've just seen some new technology that's been floated around where e-commerce businesses can build resale into their own model. Obviously, it's a tough one, resale, in terms of profit margins. But I do think that there is definitely a growing interest in circularity. And I think we'll see resale spread out from just fashion. I think we'll also see lots of other areas like homewares and electronics will be picking up on resale as well. Okay, next trend, loyalty. I mean, it's always funny calling these trends because they're not really necessarily trends in the way that you think about them. It's more about the industry shifts, I guess you maybe should call them. So loyalty, so what's this about? Well, if you've ever heard me talk about sales in general, then you'll know that I am a big believer in paying attention to your existing customers, that nobody is more likely to buy from you than someone who's already bought from you. So taking care of your loyal customers makes great business sense. What brings it as extra edge of urgency in 2022 is that one of the ways that a lot of people grew in 2020 and early 2021 was through things like acquiring new customers through paid advertising. Paid advertising has been more tricky this year, and it's with changes to the iOS 14 and making it harder to attribute sales from ads. And generally speaking, slightly more, most people I know who run ads, I'd say it's fair to say, have had a tougher time in 2021. Not to say it doesn't work, people still run them, but the kind of growth model about acquiring new customers, I think, has been slightly trickier. So when that happens, paying even more attention to your loyal customers makes a lot of sense. So retention, repurchasing, as opposed to focusing as much on new customer acquisition. There's lots of different pieces that make that up. I mean, to be honest, what's interesting about loyalty is often it comes down to really basic things about great customer service. So talking to your customers, giving them a great experience when they purchase from you, that's all really important. There's also some other key things coming through, things like reputation management. So reputation management is effectively being really clear about what happens when somebody goes onto your online profile or searches you or looks at you on social media. What impression are they getting of what other people, not you, not what you say about yourself, but what other people say about you? So things like reviews, things like user-generated content, encouraging users to share, customers to share pictures of themselves with your product. All of those kind of things do play a really, really important role in customer decision making. And in a way, it just gets more important. The more people that sell online, the more customers want to see proof that you are doing what you say you do and that you're a really great, reputable company. So survey of 800 marketers showed that 57% of them said that reviews and user-generated content were more important now. These are marketers of fairly large-sized retailers. They found that reviews and user-generated content was actually more important than advertising. So it's really thinking about that when people are looking at that point of purchasing, that you can really pull them in and entice them and convince them that you're the right choice for them. There's other elements as well. You could argue that things like payments, so payments, again, it's not like the most exciting topic when you're talking about retail for a lot of small businesses, but there's this whole move towards buy now, pay later, which is controversial. It's not, it's not without its critics. Buy now, pay later, people like Klarna, ClearPay, variety of different, a UK-based buy now, pay later company called Zilch actually won, I think, Entrepreneur of the Year from the Great British Entrepreneurs this year. And that's really all about you pay the price, the retailer gets the money minus commission, but then the customer can pay in installments. There is research that suggests that the research I saw said 78% of customers would shop with an unknown small brand if it had more payment options. So I think that what I take away from this is that, number one, you have to do what fits with you, and if it's not right for you, then I think that's absolutely fine. You have to decide for your own business whether or what you want to do in terms of offering payments. But I do think it's worth thinking about that moment when somebody's in your cart and they're thinking to convert. Do you have PayPal, for example, which I know PayPal fees are higher, but it is also the one I always say that people don't have to get out of bed to go and find their credit card if it's all saved. So just thinking about, I suppose this whole topic is thinking about the people who are already interacting with your brand. What does it take to kind of nudge them over from the interested to being a buyer? And making that an area of focus for 2022, I think will reap really big rewards. Okay. So value. This is, again, consumer shifts. This is just to really say, I'm sure a lot of you feel this in your personal life. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this from your customers, that whereas consumers want values-based retail, but I think value for money in particular is just going to be more and more on the customer's agenda as we move into 2022. Rising costs. The British Retail Consortium, I'd asked them for commentary about what's ahead for 2022. They literally said you need to have a plan for rising prices and how you will communicate that with customers. The Boston Consulting Group was the same thing, saying, you know, there's a variety of factors at the moment driving up prices. But I think that, to be honest, it's always about having a product that customers really want. But I think when it's a little volatile, there's a lot of uncertainty, that rising prices, so, you know, food costs more, energy costs more, petrol costs more. So when customers are purchasing, they're really purchasing with intention. So again, thinking about where your focus lies as a business owner, it's about really interacting with the people who are already in your sphere. And it's about really thinking about how you convince that customer to part with their money. And I always say that, you know, when you're trying to get people to buy from you, it's like they've got their money in their hand, and then you kind of have to convince them to open their hand and give you the money. And when there's rising prices and everything else and other pressures on the customer, then you have to really, like, it's really, they've got it held tight. So you really have to talk them through, how do you open up your hand and give it to you. So it's I guess just acknowledging that you know, I'm going to say that I'm assuming that most of the people watching here today have got small, purpose-led, design-led businesses. Then the products that you sell are the kind of products that people would buy with intention. So thinking about that, and when I was talking to Etsy's Dana Ison-Johnson yesterday, she said, and I'd asked her about this, I said, do you think that customers are going to be spending less next year? And she said, well, the thing is that it's really, it's about shopping with intention. People will be shopping even more with intention. And it's been that way where people have been thinking about where they spend their money. So they're thinking about that. What does it say about me as a person, where I spend my money? And I want to spend my money with somewhere that says something good about me as a person. So she talked about people consciously shopping. So consciously shopping to either support the type of business that they like, whether it's a Black-owned business or a small business or a local business, whether it is a sustainable business. So she's seeing that the consumer is going to be thinking carefully about what they spend. Which again is probably always true, to be honest, isn't it? You know, I don't think it's been a long time since everyone's just been flush with cash and chucking it around. So it's thinking about when you're presenting your products to your customer, that you're showing them how they're shopping with intention when they shop with you. I can see lots in the chat. I will be going through them again, but I'll go through that all at the end. I can't wait to see what everyone has to say. Okay, so then product trends. So we've talked a lot about some shifts in the industry. So then just to wrap up, you know, it's about having multiple models. It's about selling, the social selling, and the way that people are buying changing. People really want values, interacting with people already in your sphere, and people wanting value, which again, these are all things that I know for sure I've talked about before, but it's that kind of urgency as we move into 2022. So product trends, this is just a few things I've got coming through, but in terms of what are people going to be looking for. So for this, I heard from Shopify about the products that they've seen sort of trending, Etsy, and then I also spoke to Pinterest as well. So Pinterest, I have to say, both Etsy and Pinterest, and possibly even Shopify too, I'm not sure, they all do have trend reports, and Pinterest in particular is very interesting because they said that with Pinterest that pinners are planners. So people who use Pinterest are planning ahead. So it's almost like if you can see the trend now, what they're searching for, then that's almost what they're going to be planning on buying even in 3-4 months. So definitely have a look. I think it's called Pinterest Predicts 2022. There's a whole big report. And the same with the Etsy trend report as well. It's not as big as the Pinterest one, I don't think, but there's lots of really interesting detail in there if you want to get more into this kind of thing. And then also trend forecasting organizations, so people like WGSN, they often have free newsletters. Sometimes they even run free webinars. I was looking at Pantone, for example, who of course do Colour of the Year, but they run free webinars and things like that from time to time. So if you are interested in the whole trend side of things, and obviously you can tell I'm not a visual person because there's not any pictures on the product trends, but in terms of the overall kind of things that people are talking about, then this is what came up. So personal health and well-being, beauty and wellness, sort of putting those two together, those were flagged up everywhere. So Shopify, when they were talking about wellness, they talked about specifically things like CBD, and so that sort of element as well. Lots to do with home workout. I know that I think the thing is that the customer, from what I can gather, it's like, well, I mean, you probably just think about yourself, right? You know, the customer's still not sure about what's going to happen. So even though the home is not quite as much a focus as it was in 2020, it's definitely not like the customer is just like, okay, no, that's it. We're not going to need to be at home more at any point in the future. The customer is very much looking at the fact that we just don't know what's going to happen. And there could be periods when you're going to be home more than others. So home workout, so very much like the wellness side of things, and then also what Dana at Etsy was talking about was this Swedish concept of lagom, which is balance. So it's kind of wellness is an interesting one because it's almost like a mega trend, but then it slightly manifests itself differently each year. So what she was talking about was about this idea of balance. So not too much, not too little. So people are really looking to kind of balance things out in their lives. Refreshing the home, as I said, there was lots of information here about how people are still looking to be comfortable. So Shopify talked about, for example, one of their top sellers was these like giant oversized wearable hoodies, hoodies or whatever they're called. So people looking for that comfort, like heated blankets and sort of cozying up their home, refreshing items like that in their home. And then for Etsy, they were talking about that we've kind of come through these phases. So when we first went into lockdowns in 2020, people were scrambling. They were kind of very much trying to do, you know, home learning from the kitchen table as well as working. And then over 2020 into 2021, people sort of adapted their homes to create workspaces, to actually be able to live in, to do all these things. Big focus on the home as a sanctuary, but now we're slightly moving towards that's still really important. People really want their homes to be restful, but now it's about really people want their homes to reflect themselves. They want them to be playful, and there's more color coming through. So things like statement lighting, for example, is a big trend on Etsy at the moment, and these color pops, and just basically sort of this injecting this fun element into homes, which we've not seen for a while. And Pinterest also talked about this thing called dopamine dressing, which was all about brightly coloured dressing, and kind of fits in that trend of people just sort of slightly bored of the whole muted colour palette, neutral tones. They want to see something a bit more fun. Pets, really important. So one of the top selling products on Shopify was the Furbo dog cam, where people could check in on their dog. And Pinterest have tons and tons of increases in searches on things like how to catify your home, which if anyone saw my Instagram stories and the cat knocked over the Christmas tree this weekend, then clearly I need to catify my home. Luxury cat rooms, luxury dog rooms, like luxury dog furniture, this kind of thing. So pets is a really big trend continuing. And then hobbies as well. So yeah, everyone I spoke to said that people are going to continue to look, that a lot of people have realized that having a creative outlet brings them joy in their lives. Going back to this idea of balance, people really do want to try and balance things. They want to have these different elements, and they want to have these creative outlets, so it's not all just about work. It can also be about being creative, so they can seeing that continue as well. There's also focus on DIY, so doing it yourself around the house, whether that's creating your own artwork or creating something that's really bespoke and personal to you, but that can look set to continue into 2022 as well. So you go, that was a whistle-stop tour through the product trends. But as I said, there's so much information out there that if you want to dig into it more and see some actual visuals, I'm just laughing at myself because I do things with Joanne Griffin from Creative Flow Collective, and she always has beautiful Pinterest boards and graphics, and I'm like, here, have some text on a slide. So if you want to see more of the actual visual side of things, then there's so much out there. I really recommend that you have a look. Okay, so what can you do during this time? I've just bombarded with loads of information about where it looks like the industry is moving. But for you as a small business owner, you know, what is the best way to use this time? Hopefully you kind of wrapped up, or you're about to wrap up. I'd definitely say taking a break is really, really important. It has been really tough. And I know from, as I said, that all the conversations that I've had and the reactions that I've had from people to anytime I post anything about, you know, it's not your fault, you're not the only one who feels like this is volatile or difficult this year. I always get such an overwhelming response, so I know what a tough year it's been for so many people. So then taking a break is actually really, really important, just to recharge, and also because I think it's really hard sometimes to be creative and to think about innovative ideas and how you can move your business forward when you're just completely and utterly just, you know, so incredibly busy. If you want to do anything, you know, start making a plan of action. Maybe you just start pulling together some thoughts, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a moment. And then think about ways to use your Christmas sales to help you springboard into 2022. So plan of action, I would suggest make it very simple. Either using what we've talked about today, whether you want to kind of digest what that might mean for your business and think about what you might want to do, whether it's a question of doing a bit of a how did Christmas go. I know club members, we're going to be doing our Christmas recap in January, but even if you just want to start jotting down some thoughts, for example, were there things that came up that were really clearly a problem that you want to get fixed, like your website wasn't great, or you were over reliant on one sales channel or one social media channel and you want to change that. Think about what you want your short term to do, and then medium term and long term. So maybe some of these things that we talked about, maybe building on loyalty, maybe that's something that you really want to do, but you don't think you can get to it right away. You're going to do that maybe in the medium term, so second quarter of the year, April onwards. And then long term, what do you want to do, or what do you want to do, make sure you've done before next Christmas. So try and be realistic, try not to overwhelm yourself. The idea of kind of getting some of this information and inspiration is to get you thinking, but don't feel like you have to do it all at once, because you absolutely 100% don't have to do all of these things, make all these changes right now. You need to rest, recuperate a bit, and then start thinking about, okay, what do I need to do in Q1, which typically tends to be fairly quiet, depending on your business, obviously, and then moving forward as well. Using Christmas sales then, again, as I said, Often we think about the Christmas time period as the ending point, but it's often can be the beginning. You will most likely, I know that it's been a little bit up and down for a lot of people, but most likely you will have had more customers at this time of year than other times of year. And just simply the fact that you've given them, no doubt, excellent customer service, kept them well updated, communicated with them, that will make a big impact on how they think about them, thinking about coming back to you in the future. But you can also be a little bit more proactive. So do you want to, for example, plan a bit of a check-in in January? If people purchase from you, just say an automated email that goes out that says, did you like your product? Or it doesn't even have to be automated if you've got the time to go and contact people directly, as long as they've given you permission to contact them. Can you ask them to leave reviews? That's a really good one as well, because if you've had more customers now than other times of the year, this is the time to ask them for reviews, because as we touched on, that loyalty aspect, the reviews, the user generated content. So can you ask them for photos? Can you have a competition where if they post a photo of them with your product that you give them £10 off, that kind of thing? Can you do some kind of bounce back offer? So if they purchased in December, that you're giving them £10 off in January, for example, or specific and targeted offers. So for example, if you sell an item, let's say you sell a bath oil, and you know that typically people use it for a couple of months before they run out and they need a refill, then maybe 2 months after they purchase it from you, you can set up an email that says, hey, running low, just wanted to check in. So just thinking about going back to this idea of that nobody's more likely to buy from you than somebody who's already bought from you. So thinking about that, and thinking about ways that you can incorporate that really as you move forward, and you can just keep going with that conversation. It may seem daunting because we often think about our customers as this big kind of mass, but there's all people. It's all just conversations with people, and these people like you enough to purchase from you. Okay, so in conclusion then, what does it mean preparing for 2022? So it's been a volatile and challenging year. There are some key trends coming along that will be shaping how you and your customers shop in 2022. Why not take this time to regroup, look ahead, put together your first thoughts of a plan of action? Doesn't even have to be like a full-blown plan, but even just jotting down your thoughts is useful, but otherwise taking a break. Yeah, and that's it. If you've got any questions, then as I said, if you can pop them into the Q&A, that would be really helpful, even if you've already put them into the chat. Yeah, do come say hi, Resilient Retail Club on Facebook and Instagram. Just quickly before we get into the questions, I just wanted to say, first of all, if you are not a club member already, then I definitely invite you to check out the Resilient Retail Club. You can go to resilientretailclub.com and find out all about it. But it's my membership group. We have around 300 members, all product businesses, and it's really there for me to support and share as much information. And also the community support's amazing too. We have a private Facebook group, 4 live events a month, including 2 Ask Me Anything sessions where you can ask me any questions you like about your business, as well as workshops and planning sessions. And we also have an entire library of courses, which is all around how do you build a profitable product business, from growing your sales to managing your email marketing, launches, the rest of it. It's all there in the course portal, and it's £29 a month to month. No minimum sign up required, and no questions asked cancellation. If you want to come for a month, check out, see if it's right for you, you can. Otherwise, yeah, you're very welcome to. And also just to say that I'm running a free challenge at the end of January. This is my 3rd year doing it. I absolutely love these. If you've done them before, let me know in the chat, but these are really fabulous. Plan Your Year 2022 free challenge. It's 5 days. We have 5 tasks. We go have an Ask Me Anything every night. And it's a great way to start 2022 if you're feeling in a bit of a slump. I definitely recommend it. It's completely free to join, and this is the URL to sign up: resilientretailclub.com. Oh, I forgot the .com. resilientretailclub.com/plan2022. Okay, so on to the questions. Claire says, do you have any advice for breaking into wholesale? It's a great question, Claire. The club actually has, I'm not sure if you're a club member or not, but the club has a full suite of courses called Introduction to Wholesale, goes through everything from the information that you need, the how to approach people, everything else. So I definitely recommend those courses. I did them to Therese Autumnblad, who's Small Business Collaborative, who's brilliant. And let me just move this, sorry. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing. And I would say that the key thing about breaking into wholesale is being ready yourself, knowing knowing the information that you need, being prepared so that when you approach them, that you come across as professional, someone who knows what they're doing, and you've got all the right information and the right terminology, so that it's much less nerve-wracking for you, basically. It says, I noticed a lot of the same makers locally are selling in local shops. I don't seem to be able to get noticed. Do you have any advice? Well, I think actually it could work to your benefit because I know that there are some shop owners on here on the call today, because I saw Sally put a comment in. The thing is that it's not always beneficial. Shop owners quite often like to have a slightly unique selection. They don't want to have the same as everything else. So if you are seeing the same makers being sold in all the local shops, the fact that you are a different product can be beneficial. I think it's about being really clear on how, I think whenever you're approaching wholesale, you have to put yourself in the shop owner's shoes. So you have to think to yourself about, how does my product help them? Is my product the same? Is it going to sell in their shop? Because that's the main thing they're thinking about, is this going to sell if I put it in my shop? And the thing I always say about wholesale as well is you have to remember that in order to purchase your product and put it on their shelves, they've got to take somebody else's product off. So it's really, which can sound daunting, but it's just to get you to kind of fix your mindset in the right place for when you're having a conversation with the shop owner. It's not about, I'd like to sell my product to you. It's about, I think this product will be great for you because. So that's definitely the way that you want to implement it. I think having conversations, I think starting locally is actually really good because you've already got a built-in connection. And often a lot of people will start their wholesale journey with their local stockists because they are able to walk it, well, first of all, to actually say hi in person, but also there's a natural connection. And also, interestingly, when we were talking about loyalty, I didn't go through this in the slide, but loyalty and locality are really closely linked. So there's lots of research during the pandemic that shows that people are, for example, there were 4 times as many searches for people looking for stock locally on Near Street during the pandemic than there was before the pandemic, and that has stayed at that level because people are really looking to shop local. And there's lots of other research as well. So, for example, the Boston Consulting Group, which is a pretty big study, they found that people were increasingly looking to shop with local, so they had increased loyalty to local brands. So I would say that being local is a really good starting point. It's a great way to get into some stockists. And once you've got one stockist, it makes it much easier to get others, because again, if you put it from the retailer's perspective, then they're going to want to know that you know how to run your wholesale business, that you're not going to let them down, and that your products sell. And one of the best ways for them to feel comfortable about that is to feel like, okay, well, they've got other stockists, so they must know what they're doing. If that makes sense. Okay, Sally says, absolutely, yes, I really try and avoid selling the same things as other shops. I'm always looking for something different to make my shop different to everyone else. Yeah, absolutely. And I know for a fact, talking to people who were devastated because their supplier went and supplied another shop in the same town, whereas they're really trying to curate, you know, if you're a town with multiple shops, you really want to have a different, you know, have a reason for people to come to you. You don't want to have the same thing as everyone else. I've just set up Smile Loyalty on my website. What is your view on these types of schemes? I don't know Smile particularly, but I do think loyalty schemes are very good, and very important. There's a podcast episode. I can't remember the number, but I did it with Loyalty Lion, which is another, it's a very popular loyalty scheme a lot of people who have Shopify use. And they are, and it's a really interesting chat about loyalty in general. So it was quite a lot earlier in the year. So I'm going to say it was about episode number 30, 40. So my podcast is the Resilient Retail Game Plan. If anyone's never listened to it before, you can find it on my website, resilientretailclub.com, under free stuff, or you can find it on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts. So it was somewhere around the middle of the year, I think, and it was about loyalty. And the reason I'm suggesting that you listen to that is just because it was such a good chat with a person from Loyalty Line, Fiona Stevens. And it was really talking about these types of schemes and how they evolved and what customers are looking for, and how it's not always necessarily about a financial reward. Sometimes it's about feeling like you're part of the business, and so there can be sort of content-based rewards as well, but I definitely suggest giving it a listen. Shruti, hi Shruti. Hi Catherine, I'm solely wholesale. How can I get reviews? I already have client testimonials from most. Okay, so reviews in terms of, I think it is always good to have reviews on sort of an open platform. So it's good to have testimonials as well. So you have testimonials, the difference I'd say between a testimonial and a review is, let's say a testimonial is you say to a customer, would you be able to put some nice words about me? Or would you be able to give me a testimonial? And then they send it to you, and then you can put that on your website, client feedback, this kind of thing. That's really useful. A review is where it's done, it's a similar thing, but they put it through a platform like Google reviews. So if anyone doesn't have a Google My Business account, then I really highly recommend you set it up. Google My Business, it's free. I think it's business.google.com. You just have to verify. I think they send you a postcard, which is charmingly analog in this digital age. They verify your details. If you're, I'm verified and I don't have a physical premises, but I had to give them my address for verification, but it doesn't show up. So it's not, not a security issue. You can just say I'm not a physical premises and they won't show your address. And then once you've done that, you can have Google reviews. And then again, it's nice because number one, if they Google you, then half of the results page taken up on the right hand side is your Google My Business profile. So it's a nice big presence, and then also people can see your reviews, and it can have a really transformative effect on whether or not they click on your website, and also if they're comfortable enough to buy from you. So in terms of how do you turn testimonials into reviews, you could simply contact the people and say, look, I'm really trying to build up my Google reviews. Would you mind just pasting what you wrote to me into my Google reviews? And then going forward, when you ask people to give you a testimonial, you could just say instead, could you give me a review? And here's the link to my review. And you can still take that text and put it on your website as a testimonial. There's nothing to stop you doing that, but it just means also for the client or for prospective customer, if they Google you, then it pops up. I hope that helps. Okay. Thanks for the informative webinar. What's your biggest piece of advice for someone just starting out in 2022 and starting the product launch, going through the supply stage currently? Okay, biggest piece of advice if you're starting out in 2022 is talk to your customers, as many as you possibly can, especially if you're in the process of developing the product. We often start with a product thinking, this is something that I would like, I'm my customer, but I think that the more research you can do, the more people you can talk to. I once saw it said that you should talk to 100 prospective customers before you start your business, which I think is tough, but I think that it's actually really, it can be really beneficial just having those conversations with people, and doing as much research as possible. The other big piece of advice is start as small as you possibly can. If you don't have an audience, if you're somebody who's already got a massive audience, then, you know, perhaps you're pivoting into products, then that's one thing. You can maybe be a little bit bolder. But if you're first starting out and you're from ground zero, you want to start with as small quantities as possible. So for example, just to kind of put this in perspective, so I don't know if any of you have heard of Amy Fuchsia, who's a fashion influencer and has her own product line, and she has, I can't remember, I think it's like 100 to 200,000 followers. And when she first started manufacturing her clothing line, she bought 40 of each item, 30 or 40 of each item. And so I think, you know, always start small if you can. Just if you've not got an audience, like, could you make one of something to see if there's an audience for it? Because what I see a lot of people do is say, right, I've got this idea, right, I have to have it manufactured, right, their minimum order is 300, and before you know it, you've got all this stock and you've got to sell it, and it's an uphill battle. So build your audience before you launch, and really keep your investment as low as possible to start off with. Okay. Excuse me. I'm a service-based business as a life and spiritual empowerment coach. So can you advise what the key things to focus on in 2022 for sales which are not product-based? I think there's definitely some elements that are do overlap. I would say that loyalty actually is as valid a concern for service businesses as it is for product businesses. I also think that value and values based is as important as well. I think people expect transparency, integrity, honesty from their service-based businesses, as they absolutely 100% should. So I think those are really key and important as we move forward. And I think also that loyalty piece, because equally, you know, the sort of impact of ads is felt just as much in the service business as well as on a product business. So really thinking about how can you engage with it's not always about having a bigger audience. Often it's about engaging more with the audience that you do have. And also just, again, going back to what does your audience need right now? Which is the same for a product business as well. Where is your customer right now? What do they need right now? What are they interested in? So thinking about any product, because effectively a service, even as a service business, you have products. So thinking about how can what you're offering, is that 100% tailored to where your customer is in 2022. Okay. We're a fruit farm selling seasonal fruit July to March. We just can't seem to sell fruit online, and so far has never paid back, so we've given up. Any tips? Wow. Oh, sounds delightful, to be honest. I think food retail is, you know, this is slightly different. I would imagine, who are you selling to? If you're selling fruit online, you know, I would think about why do people not buy from you? And I would be very interested in having those conversations. If you can possibly persuade people who've not purchased from you, maybe people who purchase from you in person, you can ask them, have you ever purchased from me online? And I would be trying to understand. I think if you were like absolutely committed to say, right, we want to grow our online sales, there's a couple of different things. I think, or I would think about this whole hybrid retail. So is it actually that you need to have an online web store, or is it about that you need to recognize that people will come online to research your fruit stall, your fruit farm, sorry, and they're going to look at it, they're going to check it out, they're going to read the reviews, they're going to check your opening hours, and then they're going to come if they feel like they're going to find what they want when they arrive there. So I would say that the hybrid element may or may not be transactional. Maybe that people won't purchase from you online, but you still need to be really clear that they're going to start their journey online. So when they Google your farm name, what happens? Do they see, you know, 100 5-star reviews saying that it's amazing and they should go and it's the best fruit they've had? In which case they will come. So I would say thinking about the hybrids, they're starting online, but they may finish at your store. And then if you really say, no, I absolutely 100% want to drive that online element, I would start asking people, what are the barriers? Why are people not buying? Ask the people who come to you in person but never buy from you online. Why is that? People, why would somebody not buy from you? Are they concerned about the fruit getting damaged? Is it just that people will normally buy fruit if they're buying it online, they'll buy it from the supermarket? Is it that you need to offer gift baskets? If you had a gifting option for your fruit, then that would be something that people might purchase online. Is it that in the winter they would buy preserves, for example? I don't know, but I think if it's not working, it's thinking about, always bring it back to the customer. What's their journey like, and what are the barriers? Is it that you have to change your FAQs to explain how you ship so that everything arrives in pristine condition? What is it that's stopping them actually purchasing from you? Okay, so next question says, sorry, can't see, why have I lost that? Okay. How much emphasis should we put on the Pantone? I should also say as well, for anybody who's watching this, if you have to go, I appreciate that it's now 11:10. I'm happy to keep going until 12:30. But if you have to go, then this is all being recorded. So if you want to watch the replay, catch up on the replay, then you're absolutely welcome to. Okay, so Katie says, how much emphasis should we put on the Pantone colour of 2022? Is it worth creating products around this? Oh, this is a very interesting question. Very Perry. Very Perry, is it worth creating products? I think that depends on your business. So if you are an interiors business and you have a customer that is very much interested in trends, then it would tie in nicely to have something that is in the color of the year. Also bear in mind that if you wanted to create something almost for PR purposes, because at some point you know that a magazine is going to do like a gift guide or how to bring Very Perry into your home in 2022, you just know that their interiors magazine is going to be doing that, because they always do. So there could be a reason to do it, if you think your customer will respond to it. Also depends how easy it is for you to create products. If you're a designer who can create a design or recolor a design into Very Perry, I would absolutely 100% do it. If you're somebody who does art prints, and in fact I have a client who does prints, and I have this conversation with them. I'm always like, why not do color of the year, because it's something that you can recolor it into. If it was going to be that you have to order 3,000 items from a factory to get that shade, then I would not so much be into that. So it's like, can you do it? How easy is it for you to do it? And then thinking about it is, will you have a customer who likes it? And could it potentially tie into, if you're doing a lot of PR, could that potentially work for you as well? Any advice how to move away from wholesale into more direct sales, says Mim. Hearing this about this color, isn't it? Claire says, I've been hearing about this color, isn't it purple this time? Something sticking in my mind. Yes, very periwinkle. Mim says, any advice how to move away from wholesale into more direct sales? I think that a lot of that is about building up your digital presence. So if you've got a wholesale, the benefit of having a wholesale business is, number one, that means that you must have decent product margins in order to be able to wholesale your product. So the margins are going to be delightful when you're selling directly to the customer. But in a way, it's the same as starting a business from scratch. It's about building up your digital presence, having a really great website that's easy to shop. You may decide to, if you want to go direct to customer, you may want to try a third-party marketplace as well, like Etsy or Not on the High Street, that kind of thing, as well as your own website. The trickiest thing about having your own website is going to be driving traffic to it. You have to think about all the different ways that you can drive traffic to it, which is one of the things that I've got a course inside the membership called Grow Your Sales that goes over this in a lot more detail. But I'd say that the key thing really is having a way for people to purchase from you online, and also understanding who your direct customer is. because you'll have a wholesale customer. You're almost like an ideal customer avatar for wholesale, but you'll also have one for your direct to consumer sales. It's thinking about who that is, where they are, where you can find them, where you can reach them. Okay, Lucinda says, hi Lucinda, we started wholesale this year, which has been successful. We see this as a growth area for 2022, but are concerned at the volatility of our production costs, i.e. we found freight has increased by 3-4 times. How do we price, not knowing always if we're going to get caught by raw material increases or freight? This is a very, very common question, Lucinda, and it is a real concern for people who are purchasing, who are importing, which is, you know, a lot of people. I would say, I mean, to be honest, it's the same issue that retailers have faced for many years, because there's always been currency fluctuations. So the best way to do it is to hedge it. So basically, what's your best forecast for what you think they're going to be, and try and build it around that, making sure that you can at least have an idea of, okay, so let's say you're going to estimate your freight costs. Depending on who you're using, can they give you any indication of which way freight costs are going to go in 2022, although we all know they're going to go up. So I would try and build a worst case scenario cost price around your currency fluctuations and freight increases and potentially raw material increases. I would have it do a pricing review of your retail prices just to see whether or not there's any room to move those. Obviously that's the last resort, but you do have to, as I said, the British Retail Consortium actually said every retailer needs to have a plan for how they're going to communicate increasing costs to their customers, which I think was a pretty stark comment, really. So looking at your costing, whether or what you need to do there, if there's anything you can do on your retails, as I said, last resort. But I'd say worst case scenario. You have to forecast it, and you just have to do it the best way that you can. Okay. Asley asks, I sell on more than one platform and I agree with not putting my eggs into one basket. However, it contradicts with spreading thinly. What would be your tips on prioritizing selling platforms and giving too much or less attention to platforms in that order? That's a great point, Asley. I mean, it is tough, it's for sure. And I think that has been one of the most challenging things about 2021 and 2022 is that even if you think about, 2020 and 2021, if you think about being a physical store, it's great. It's fine for me to sit here and say that you should be thinking about hybrid retail, but we all know that running a website is a full-time job and running a store is a full-time job. So I think that in order of priority, I would look where you make the most profit. I would say if you have to choose between the time that you can spend, always look at where you're going to make the most profit. And sometimes that is the most profit per item, so which is always your own website. Your own website is always going to be the most profitable place for you to sell your products, full stop, because you most have to sell, you most have to pay, you know, a small charge, 2-3% on payment processing. Whereas if you sell wholesale, then you're talking about under 50% of your retail price. And if you talk about, you know, a third party marketplace, you're talking about them taking a chunk of commission. So whichever way you slice and dice it, you're going to make the most money selling through your own website. But sometimes you have to look at, okay, that's your profit per item, but you do have to sometimes look at your overall profitability as a business. Where's the most money coming in? If it is wholesale, then I would say, okay, fine, I've got to pay most attention to that, but then maybe I try over time to build up my my own website so that eventually they kind of my own website can go up slightly, and then wholesale, you know, stay as it is, increase. You kind of want to gradually do it. So I would say go with the money. Where you make the most money is where you need to focus, and then and do what you can. And it is, I always say this, the two most precious resources that small businesses have are time and money. So you do have to budget both of those carefully. So it's like you gotta protect your main income stream, but then it's thinking about what else can I build up around that to the best of my ability. Gwen Dixon says, can I change my Google My Business profile then, as it shows my address, although I'd prefer it not to? I would definitely have a look at that. It should be. I'm pretty sure it was a setting that just said that I could, I was not a physical premises. I just ticked a box. So I'd go in your settings and have a look around and see if you can change anything, and maybe contact help if you can't. But yeah, I think if you don't have a physical premises, you don't have to show it. Becky says, thanks so much for the webinar. It's been a great help. Very welcome. Can I ask, do you think local craft markets are a good way to build a customer base? I make larger items, bench and seat cushions mostly, which feel like they're less practical to approach local retailers with. Are local markets a good alternative? I think local markets are fabulous. And I think that, again, when we talk about hybrid, then having multiple streams and multiple ways of talking to your customer, physical events like markets are really, I think, can be really powerful, because as you know, if you've got, especially if you've got a bigger item, sometimes people just have to see what you sell. They have to see the quality, they have to see the workmanship that goes into it. They just have to see the product to really get what you're doing. Or you have to spend a lot of time doing videos, which, you know, is certainly possible. But I would say that it's a great way. And I would think very much then about, how do you encourage the customer that sees you at the craft market? How do you capture them? So I don't know if any of you are familiar with Pedal, which is a great organization, and Nikki's wonderful who runs it. But they're always thinking about that. Markets themselves are very much thinking about hybrid. They're thinking about, if you've got somebody who walks past your stall, how do you then get them to come back and shop from your website? Do you have a giveaway where people are able to put their email address in order to then they join your mailing list, for example? Can you offer them a voucher that says, come back and shop from my website, get for 10% off? So how can you really, I think, yes, be in person, be in a physical space. I think it's brilliant. Also will mean that you'll get asked lots of questions, which you can then feed directly into the FAQs on your website, because now you've been to a craft market and people have asked you all these questions, and you can think, right, this is what people are thinking about when they're buying. But then how can you really join those dots? How can you encourage them to then shop from you online? Because that's the key thing, is that they may be interested, or they may see it and they think, oh, okay, all right, I think about it. But if you can then connect with them and encourage them to shop from you, or to engage with the digital presence, then those customers over time, the customers that interact with you on more than one channel, whether it's digital, physical, whether it's wholesale, you know, they see your product in a shop and then they come check your website. The customers that interact with you across more than one channel are the ones that tend to be the most loyal. They spend the most. They're the best customers for your business. So yes to craft markets. I think they're great. I think it's hard to beat sometimes, just physical presence, meeting people in person, but really think about tying that into your digital so that the two really complement each other. And try really sending people from your digital presence to your physical events. So if you're doing a physical event, make sure you're absolutely shouting about it on Instagram, wherever else you're marketing your business, your email marketing. Make sure that you're pushing people to come and see you in person, because again, if they've already done their research and they've seen your items and they really love them online, then when they come to your store, they'll be ready to buy. So or more ready to buy, I should say. So always think about that, thinking about the ping pong effect. Wonderful. Okay, can you recommend a good stock management system? I sell wholesale through galleries and I have a website, Squarespace. Okay, this is a really tricky question, because I think that there's some which are really not great. There's a few that I do recommend. I'm going to put them in the chat. So we have, well, to be honest, I don't know if any of them work with Squarespace, if I'm honest, actually. It might be worth checking out. So there's one called Veeqo. There's one called Chaos Control. And there's one called, I think it's called Inventora, which is somebody told me about that recently. And then somebody also told me about one called Zedonk. So I think it's in Ventura. I'm not sure about that. And Zedonk. I don't have personal experience with them, but those ones that people have told me about. I also don't know if they work with Squarespace. But the answer is if you've yet to find a really great stock management system, then you're not alone. It's not that easy. Zero, which is both for my accounts and inventory. Yeah, so you can, that was a comment from Shruti. Yes, you can do wholesale purchase orders and things like that through your accounting system. I think Shruti's right. I think Xero is one of the better ones for doing that. So that could be an option, but it's tough. I am yet to find one that I'm just like, yeah, that's really amazing. So okay, all right. It is 11:22. Thank you so much to everybody. As I can see that the chat was going crazy, so thank you so much for that. As I said, do come along if you go to resilientretailclub.com/plan2022. Sign up for the 5-day challenge. I can't wait. It's so exciting. It's last year I think there was 700 people joined, and it was brilliant because we basically had 5 days together in a Facebook group, and lots of thoughts about how do we plan the year. Obviously this year we're going to be focusing on how do you plan a year that's going to be effectively volatile and unpredictable. So how do we predict the unpredictable? That's going to be one of the big focuses this time, but it's just a great way for kind of getting focused, getting out of that January slump, and really getting your head into what's ahead for 2022. I always get really great feedback from these challenges. People really enjoy them. I'm probably just going to run one. I think I'm just going to run them once a year, just in January. Last year I ran it, last couple of years I've run them twice, but I think the January one's always the best because that's the mindset that everyone's in, is getting ready for January for 2022. So yeah, please come along and join me. And of course, if you're very welcome to join the club. As I said, you're welcome to come for as long or as little as you like. It's no minimum sign up. It's really about creating a supportive community, sharing knowledge and cheering each other on. Okay, so thank you again, and also thank you to everyone who's watching on the Christmas week, and anyone who's watching in between Christmas and New Year. And if you're about to wrap up for the season, then I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful break, and I will see you all soon.